This morning I had an appointment with my cardiologist at the Blackrock Clinic at 9 o'clock. I think I was very young when I went to school first, some between 3 and 4. I could be wrong on that now. But we lived quite near the National School. I remember in my early days, I was a reluctant schoolgoer. I had to be carried. It's kick up a bit of a fuss. But I settled into it anyway eventually. That didn't go on for all that long, I'm sure. But I mean, there were a lot of, in those days, there were a lot of poor people around. Look back on it now. There were fellas who used to actually, while there were students, if you like, for the school, but they were poor and they used to work in the school as well. I think to give them some bit of responsibility. And one thing I remember, when you go in the cold days of big fires, and people used to cluster around the fires.
Where, out in the yard? Or?
In the cold day. No, inside, in the classroom.
A fireplace? Like?
Yeah, well, there was no fireplace. Well, fireplaces had these fires. I mean, there was no place, what you call it, thing to rest your elbow and anything, but there was a big fireplace. And some guys had the job of keeping that going and all that sort of thing, Bits of bogdale and turf and stuff you get from the people used to get in boglands and all that, used to throw it into the fire.
It was boys' school, right? It wasn't mixed, right?
No, it was a boys' school. Boys' school, I have to think about that now. Yeah, it was a boys' school. Although the teachers were mixed. I mean, some of the teachers were female teachers, or lady teachers.
What were they like?
Mostly men. They were
tough?
They were... Well, looking back on it now, I wouldn't have thought so, really, but there might have been... They had to keep, you see, the main thing, I think, in those days was keeping law and order in the school. I suppose a lot of people like myself would have been disciplined enough. I mean, we would pay attention, but some wouldn't be. But not a lot, really. Not a lot.
Can you remember anyone in particular? Was there any one wild kid who was your neighbour or friend?
Yeah, I remember a fellow called... he was known as Bogdale. He used to fall out. Well, he was probably from a very poor background. He never had his lessons off or anything like that. And he could... he would have to be chastised at a time by the teacher. And I remember him one day with a big brush, and he coming with, and he pushing it at the teacher. So he must have been quite a big chap there, because we were all young fellas. I can't quite remember when I left. Well, no, I suppose I should be able to remember when I left the National School, because I went to St. Flannan's secondary school then.
What was Flannan's like?
Flannan's would have been looked on those days as tough, hard going. I say I liked it. I mean, once I liked it, you wouldn't say, but I got on all right there. But I had, you see, my parents had died I was 4 years a day pupil in St. Flannan's, and I think in my 3rd year my parents died, and then I went in. I was a year a boarder in St. Flannan's College. Well, St. Flannan's College was one of these what they call diocesan colleges. A lot of people who went there went on to become priests. Went on to become priests, like in Maynooth, and they would arrive in the school in dark clothes.
Really?
Yeah, when it's dark, that have black clothes, navy blue clothes, meant that this was going to be their garb for the rest of their life.
God.
They were going to become
from the age of 12, like.
Yeah.
Did you wear that?
No.
So even at that young age, the certain kids were kind of targeted. Okay, you're going to be a priest.
Well, you see, and I think there was probably a lot of them. You see, they went on to, as I said, a lot of those people who decided to become priests would have gone on to Maynooth for when they left St. Flannan's, and there they met boys from the rest of Ireland who'd come through the same schooling situation. For instance, I know that in Letterkenny they had St. Unions, which would be the equivalent of St. Flannan's in Ennis. And there'd be quite a number of those that would go on there and become, on the first day of entry, they would arrive in dark clothes, maybe at 11 or 12 years of age.
And were the kids, were they all religious? Were you religious? Like, did you pray, you know?
No. But, no, you did... I wouldn't have said I was religious, but I mean they always said prayers before the school started, and you did that. And I don't remember any prayers at the end of schooling each day. You know, I don't remember any of that, but there could have been. No, there was no particular. I mean, there was no. We led the same life, and I mean, I would have led the same life as these boys who were arriving in, specifically with the set out to be priests.
And can you
the majority of, I suppose, the majority of boys who were there were not going to be priests, and we all did the same thing.
And can you remember any particular incident from those 4 years, like something that sticks in your memory? Were there fights?
Oh, there would have been fights, and I remember boys being beaten up by the teachers,
really, yeah.
By the priests.
Yeah. Did you get slaps?
No, I never got beaten up, luckily enough. But I remember, and it frightened me. I remember there was one particular priest. He just used to lose his temper, and he beat the guys up, you know, pretty badly. Well, it looked pretty badly at the time, and he'd be shouting and ranting and raving at them. That would be just if they gave a wrong answer to some academic question or some, you know.
God.
Yeah. So.
And what kind of fun things did you do?
What?
What kind of things did you do for fun?
Well, you see, there were games. They were played Gaelic hurling or Gaelic football and hurling, and in St. Flannan's there was a lot of that, and they were pretty good at it. And I used to play hurling. I remember at a juvenile, and I also played Gaelic football. Ennis was a fairly strong hurling stronghold.
Still is. Yeah. It still is.
It is, yeah. But I remember that was the time too. There was a ban on foreign games, and you couldn't, especially when I was a day boy. And we had an interest in rugby. There was a rugby team in Ennis. And some of my brothers, older stepbrothers, half-brothers, used to play rugby. And of course we were involved in that. But I remember one time going up to practice a bit of rugby with some of the boys. And I was called out the next day in class and stood up in front of the class as an example of being caught doing something I shouldn't have been doing, playing a foreign game.
God, amazing. And in those days, what was your house like? I mean, you walked into your house, did you have dogs? Was there lots of people around?
We had dogs. Well, we had dogs. We had a shop. On one side was a grocery and general grocery, and the other side was a pub. And the people would come in during the day to buy groceries and all that, for the needs in their own homes. And then at night time, there'd be a hardcore of people who would come in to have a few drinks in the pub. And I often served a pint, pulled pints in the pub. So there'd be lots of people, and we had a big yard to at the back, what you call a big yard, where people, and we were near the outskirts of Ennis, and certainly on fair days, and on Saturday was the market day, and people would come in with their horses and cars and ponies and traps and all that, and leave them in our yard, and maybe take the pony, they'd unstraddle the pony from the trap and leave the trap there and leave the pony loose or put him in a stable or something like that. So there'd be a fair bit of stuff going on around about at weekends, on Saturdays, and certainly on fair days. Fair days, wherever there was a fair on. On the fair days there'd be cattle all over the place outside, out on the road outside. I went to Newbridge College in September 1939. I left there in June 1943. But in 1940 is year, Newbridge won the Leinster Schools Senior Cup. And that led to a lot of, indiscipline, I suppose, in the school, because there were parties and all this sort of thing going on. Because it was a big thing for the school in those days. And at the end of the year, a lot of the guys, I think, had done very little work for their exams.
Were you on that team, or was that?
No, I was a junior. We had a very good junior team, and we had to scratch out of it due to mumps. Mumps seemed to be common in those times. And it was year in, year out. Some school would have to scratch out of the Schools Cup competition.
The mumps, it's like a cold, except it affects your voice. Yeah.
Well, it is, yeah, but it has other kind of. Mumps was one where you could get. It affected the glands of your neck and it affected your balls.
Really?
But yeah, you could get sterile. But and probably other things as well. It didn't take much out of a person, but case for spreading it. In any school that developed mumps, they were taken out of the sports competitions. But in any case, to come back to the thing, that a number of the senior boys decided, in conjunction with some of the boys, they had become friendly with some of the senior boys from Clongowes, and they hatched up this thing of getting the papers for the exam, for the leaving cert, a few nights beforehand. The exams were kept, or the papers were kept, I think, in some school in Naas at the time, and their idea was to break into the school, get the papers, and
cheat. Yeah.
There you go. But in any case, somebody, I think was the head pupil, the captain of the school, heard of it in Newbridge anyway, and he reported it to the dean. And I know we were all well, not all called before. He came into the dormitory and advised everyone that nobody was to leave their cubicles or their rooms that night, the night that it was all planned. That and that if anyone was found broke that, they'd be expelled. So in any case, I don't know, maybe some people did. I mean, we didn't know what was going on, because we were juniors at the time. And I remember that some of the guys, about 5 o'clock in the morning, came down the fire escape and were going up to get their bicycles ready, and they were cycling over to Naas to get this thing. And as soon as they arrived on level ground, there were white habits of the Dominicans surrounded them from all over the place and wouldn't let them go, wouldn't going to allow it to happen. In any case, there were, as a result of that, 3 or 4 or 5 people were expelled afterwards. I remember that very well. I don't know what happened in Clongowes, but anyway, it didn't come up. But a number of people were expelled from Newbridge.
So Flannery was probably in 6th year in.
Well, he would have left. He only spent 1 year he spent 1 year in Clongowes.
Well, where did he go after that?
He went to UCD.
Oh, he went to Flannan's up until 5th year, was it?
He did, yeah. I think he did, yeah.
So did you play rugby in the senior cup in Flannan's? And how did you do in the competition?
In Newbridge.
Or in Newbridge, sorry.
Yeah, we played. We had a very good senior team. Now, the first year as a senior, we were all 2 or 3 years underage, and most of us were beaten in the second round by a lowly team. The trainer didn't think we were going to do very well when we were in training, but the second year then, most of that team were available, and we were beaten, unluckily, 9-6 by Blackrock in the semi-final of the Cup, and we should have won it. You know, of course, we'd always say that, but we should have won it with a number of kicks on the 25, about 10 of them missed.
Oh, God.
But there you go. We and Rock were a very good team that year. They won the Cup and beaten us in the semi-final. They beat St Mary's in the final, I think. So we had good team, but we had good. I loved the rugby in Newbridge, and I was quite a good athlete as well. I remember my final year, I came up to run in the Leinster Sports. And one thing I remember, I had the Leinster Sports in that time, Leinster School Sports used to be held in Blackrock College here. Went out to Blackrock College, and next one was thunder and lightning came down, and the sports were called off. And I left my trousers, like that. I left it inside. I was in my running gear. I went back in, my trousers was missing.
Someone stole them.
Stolen, yeah. It was gone. And there was a pal of mine from Ennis who was at school in Blackrock, although he was much bigger than me. So I borrowed a trousers from him and got back. But then, to have meant another day, we didn't go up a second day.
Yeah.
But I remember I was the best all-round athlete in Newbridge College in my final year and all that kind of thing. You were asking me about incidents when I was in national school. I think I told you this before. But when we were in Mrs. Boland's class, come the time for finish up, which was about 3 o'clock, I think, she'd send someone out to look at the clock and find out what time it was. And I got into some sort of trouble, I don't know what I did. But the other thing, she'd send you out, if you had to get a slap, she'd send you out to the headmaster. Now, I would rarely have been sent out to the headmaster, if ever. But on this occasion, I was sent out. And I've forgotten, of course, that it was a bit of a blow. And I remember it was near 5 to 3. And I went out to the headmaster's room. And for some reason, as I went out, I looked up at the clock. And I stopped in front of it. I stayed there for a long time. Which looked a bit odd, I'm sure, and I went back in. And I was, if you got a slap, you'd go in, like, feeling your head like this, you see. As if I got my slap and came back in and sit down. And everything was all right in the class, but the headmaster, Mr. Gordon, had seen what happened, and he thought it was odd that I stayed a long time looking at the clock and then went back in. So he came in to ask, you know, why I went out. Was it to get the time? And she said no, it was to get a slap. And of course, my cover was blown. And anyway, I don't know what happened, but it was an unusual incident. It always stayed in my mind. I had been a day pupil in St. Flannan's. And then we lived quite near St. Flannan's as well, at home. And my parents died then, and I was sent in a year as a boarder, because I suppose things were a bit maybe disorganized at home and that kind of thing. So I remember going in as a boarder, and it was okay. I knew what to expect. I mean, having been there as a day pupil, just went in. I went in to live there, and I knew everyone that was there. There was nothing very spectacular. I know the dean, we were all a bit, the dean was an unusual man. He, I don't know how to describe him, Father Quealy. But he was the kind of man who thought that everyone, even as you walked around the grounds, everyone should be praying, that kind of thing. And there weren't too many laughs or anything like that. You know, it was things were quite serious. But let's see, he was dealing mostly with boys who, a lot of whom would have been going on to be priests and going on to Maynooth under the diocese's thing. And this was in St. Flannan's, being a diocesan school. Anyway, I was only there for a year. And you were saying to Newbridge College then.
You're saying that some of the boys who went to St. Flannan's, that the ones who were preparing for the priesthood were already wearing kind of black.
Yes, yeah, and maybe not all of them, but yeah, a large number of them would arrive at the school in black clothes, in sort of signifying their parents' intention that they were going on to be priests, and would be in due course going to Maynooth when the time came to when they were 18. And that was, that would have been a notable feature, yeah. Not all of them. I mean, it wasn't a law of the church or anything like that, but just it was, if you like, to put it in inverted commas, a fashion that many young boys who were going into these diocesan college would arrive there in dark clothes, signifying their intent that eventually they were going to go to Maynooth and become priests.
And what was different about the regime between St. Flannan's and Newbridge?
It was totally different, yeah. I mean, in many ways, Newbridge was almost like a holiday camp compared to it. It was a very relaxed place. I was very happy there. As I said, we used to go on walks, but then you might walk with some of the boys, you might walk with some of the priests, depending. In fact, you'd walk with the priests for halfway and then you'd leave them alone, go up and walk with some of the boys, and all that kind of thing. The whole thing was much more liberal, and you were talking to them almost on an equal footing, except that there were in local parentheses that it was a pupil and teacher, but there was no dominance, no domineering sort of thing went on or anything like that, not at all, no. You see, well, all these, I suppose all the places like the Dominicans, Jesuits and all that, they were in charge of their own. They didn't have to, they weren't under the control, they weren't under the control of Maynooth, or to extend that further, of Rome. I mean, all the Catholic activities would be would be ultimately under the control of Rome, but these places were all had their own disciplines and all that. Didn't have to come from anywhere else.
But during the summers, I guess, like, at what age did you start exploring beyond Ennis? When you were a young teenager, and what kind of things did you do, and like how far did you go, and would you start going to Kilkee with your friends at the age 14 or what? Yeah,
I did. Yeah, well, I started going to Kilkee with my friends. I was fairly free, you see. I suppose there was no. I mean, there was no in my. There were no parents at home to keep an eye on me, I suppose, and my stepbrothers were married, and had their own families to look after and that kind of thing. So I used to spend a lot of my summers in Kilkee, which I liked very much. I loved.
Where did you stay there? Did you have relatives that had a place? Did you have a place in Kilkee, or?
Oh, I had, yeah. Well, there were other students there that we knew, and I knew people.
So you just stayed in different places, like?
Yeah.
And what age did you start going to Kilkee at?
B&Bs. Well, I had been there in the family I remember going to Kilkee with my father. I remember now, when my father was alive, going to Kilkee with him.
And what do you remember about that?
A week or so. I don't remember much about that, but I remember going there and, or even younger, we used to go to a place called Miss Breen's, and we were sitting in this house overlooking the sea, overlooking the bay. And then my mother died, and I went with my father for a year. I don't know, it was a year or two, I don't know, until he passed away. But then after that, I've forgotten now whether I had a spell that I didn't go there, obviously. I used to spend some summers down with the Reedies, go down to Thurles. Sissy Reedy and Gerry Reedy, that would be Gerry Reedy's father, parents. So I'd spend my summers in, that's where I met Jack Maloney. We spent most of our summer up in the tennis club. And the other thing was we used to play a lot of snooker in Pembroke.
And so you met Jack, and what kind of things did you get up with Jack?
Well, mostly our social life was down there. Our social life would have been carried on or held up in the golf club in Thurles.
At what age were you now?
That was good fun. I suppose I was 16 maybe.
And what was going on up at the golf club?
In the golf club?
Yeah.
Well, no, not so much in the golf club, no, in the tennis club. Sorry about did I say golf club? No, it was in the tennis club. But I was involved then in the golf club in Ennis.
Well,
I used to go up there on my own playing golf.
So you played tennis with Jack, right? And then afterwards,
there was a whole lot of people there.
Were you drinking at that age?
No.
But there was fun there. Were there girls? Was there, would you be going?
There were, yeah. Lots of girls there, yeah. And we used to play tennis together, and there was table tennis there as well. But
and was Jack good with the girls? Was he a bit of fun?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Do you remember any particular incidents from that?
No, I remember two good-looking girls arrived in town one day from a place called Upper Church up in the mountains in Tipperary. And I remember Jack or myself picked them up. They were walking along they were cycling.
Did you know that you just spotted them and you said, here, let's go after them?
Yeah, they were lovely girls actually.
So you went out and was like...
Going up to one, what?
Did you ask them to play tennis or something?
We did, yeah. We asked them would they like to come up to a tennis club, and they did. But they had cycled into town, that to cycle home again, so they did that. I think we got them in again then, another day, that sort of thing. And it turns out afterwards they would have been sisters or some relation, maybe nieces of Dick Burke, who was a Fine Gael. He was an MEP for Fine Gael. He'd been a teacher, but it just transpired afterwards. We knew that. I mean, that's just happened to remember that.
So I didn't know, so you were friends with Jack before you went to UCD, so what school was he in?
Well, Jack spent a year, Jack was in Thurles CBS, and then he spent 1 year in Rossgrave College. Before he came up to Dublin, and he did pharmacy for a year, training to be a chemist in the shop. But he was a year older than me, he was in Dublin a year before I was in Newbridge that time. So I came up from Newbridge in 1943. I think I should emphasise that I loved the life in Newbridge. I loved I may have said this already, I got very interested in rugby and in athletics generally. I was good at rugby and athletics, and I enjoyed that very much. So I came up to Dublin then to start. I didn't know what I would do.
Oh really? Did you not know you wanted to be a doctor?
No, I didn't. Nobody didn't know. Very few did in those days. I became the county ophthalmic surgeon, as they called it at the time, to Donegal. And I drive up there on a Sunday and come back after 10 days and work around the county to make a few bob.
Oh, you'd spend 10 days there, would you?
We would, yeah. Because it's a big county and there was a lot of, they hadn't had any ophthalmic surgeon there for a couple of years before I came back. It was a lot of work. It accumulated, you know, people to be seen. So I would work for 10 days, including Saturdays.
Were those locums good fun? Did you do them in other counties?
I did some down around Offaly or Laois.
Did you enjoy that? I'd say that was enjoyable because, you know.
That was all right, but I mean, well, you see, while I was trying to build up a private practice, you know, where you had no money coming in, at least you got a salary from that. And you could pick up some private patients as well.
And do you remember Granny and Grandad on Mum's side?
Oh, I do, yeah. In Donegal, yeah. Well, I met them in 1950, 54, 55. Yes, yeah. On the time met Mum.
Did you stay in the hotel? Like, was that the idea? You'd if you're visiting there, would they put you in the hotel?
Yeah. I used to come down to the hotel. I'd be staying, you see, if I were working there, I'd be staying in Letterkenny for the night. But then at the weekends.
Did you have a car?
I had a car, yeah. I had my first car. I got my first car in 1954, Volkswagen Beetle, green, dark green.
You had a Volkswagen?
ZU 424440, I think it was. €400.
£400, yeah.
£400.
And so had you heard of Mum before you met her?
No.
Because you know this whole thing she's about, like when she was in the papers and all that.
Oh yeah, well that was up there. Well, I mean that was, I'd heard of her. That happened when I was up there. I think that happened about 1955 or 54. I don't know which way it was. It was in the papers, and that one Sunday up there.
And had you met Mum at this point?
No.
So I'd say it piqued your interest, right?
Probably, yeah.
And it was funny because I remember talking to Mum about it, and Mum had described how like all the sisters were all excited because the eye doctor was visiting. So was there kind of, I guess if you're a young doctor in places like Donegal, the local girls would all be quite excited.
Yeah, you'd probably get a bit more attention, all right, yeah. Especially if you're young, not married and all that kind of thing, you know. Definitely. That's the way life goes.
So were you a ladies' man?
I took my chances.
So what can you remember about meeting Mum the first time?
I met her outside at the hotel. She'd been up with one of the, Terry, I think it was, that was swimming. I met someone. Bernard told me there was Terry's husband. They were swimming in some lake nearby. And said there weren't too many around, they all got in for a swim in the nude. And I met Mum then, I was talking to her about this, pulling her leg about it.
So she was embarrassed, I'd say, was she?
So that was it.
And did you start going out with her immediately, or did you meet her again later? Like, how did it work?
I think I must have, well, I can't remember the details, but I imagine that I was going up and down. No, I would have met her here in Dublin then. She was a student in Dublin, you see, at the time. And I was really based in Dublin. I used to go up there for 10 days and probably arranged to meet her in Dublin. I imagine that's how it started.
And did you know early on that you wanted to marry her? Or did it all just... How long did you go out before you got married?
About a year.
And then, like, you got engaged and then married?
Married in 56.
And what can you remember about that first year? Like, what was kind of special moments? Did you go away on holidays? Did you go for weekends anywhere?
Well, we used to go out in groups. I remember once going up to Virginia in County Cavan. There was Mum, myself, Jacko, and no, Denise wasn't there. He hadn't met Denise at the time. Jacko was with. Funny enough, he took African Joe Kelly, and Ursula Kelly.
Afric Mum's sister?
Yeah. Derry Culligan and Mary, that sort of group. We went out together a bit. And we used to sometimes meet in the summer, down in Kilkee or Lahinch. There's nothing very, very unusual, I say, about it. So anyway, Johnny, there we go.